Well, the only thing that matters for the U.S. is what is the default currency of the world, and secondly, who brokers the power. I've been listening to the death of the U.S. dollar since 1966. Every 2 years, somebody comes along and says this is the death of the U.S. dollar.
In today's video, Canadian businessman and entrepreneur Shark Tank star, known as Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary, updates about the market and where we are headed next in the crypto space.
Obviously, we're speaking ahead of CPI, PPI, minutes from the FOMC. Any big surprises we can expect, Kevin?
I think most of the market participants and pundits are at the place where they think the Fed is nearing the end of rate hikes. Now, whether there's another 25 basis points in the May meeting, whether there's a further 25 after that, another 50 basis points, yet to be determined. I'm now moved into the camp where I would like them to pause for 3 months. And I'll tell you why I say that. I've noticed that rent in most cities outside of the coastal region has rolled over 20%, not yet reflected in the CPI data, the way that CPI is calculated. That's a mistake, should be fixed, because that's very anti-inflationary. So right now the CPI says we're at 6.1% inflation. I think the truth is we're more near 4.5%. But the one that's bothered me the most since you and I last talked is the data I'm getting from my own CEOs in mid-cap and small-cap companies. Liquidity for loans has completely dried up in the last 2 weeks. And I'll give you an easy way to look at that. Let's say you're a company doing $50 million in sales, 100 employees. At any one time, 60 to 90 days of your sales are tied up in receivables with big box retailers or whoever else you're selling to. And you used to be able to factor that, in other words, turn it into cash for about 7 to 9%. Today, those rates have gone from 17 to 29%, all in a matter of about 20 days as a result of what's occurred with the Silicon Valley Bank meltdown and the concerns regional banks now have about liquidity measurement. So that is in itself doing the Fed's work, and I would very much like the Fed to look at that data from senior loan officers as soon as they get it, because there's a big problem brewing here.
When you say big problem brewing, what is the main danger you seeing as the outcome?
You can't get any capital. You can't raise money anymore from a regional bank because regardless of whether the Fed guarantees the loan or not, the loan officer is saying, we know it's going to get tighter. We know regulation's coming. We're going to wait and see what occurs in addition to rate hikes, which make it even harder to be profitable. I think we have a real soul searching to do in America about how many of these regional banks are going to survive and how many people want to support them in perpetuity, regardless if they're ever profitable again. And so this transition will reflect itself in loans to small and mid-cap businesses, which represents 70%. That's 70% of the economy. And I think the Fed's work is done. I think they're going to have a lot of anti-inflation pressure by the fact that they're going to slow business down because they can't borrow money. I think the market should be the market. I don't think we should guarantee every depositor in every bank everywhere. If we let the market be the market, there'll be consolidation. There'll be super regionals that occur. We have 3,000 banks in addition to the money center banks. Maybe the country can run on 1,000 or 500 or 800. I don't know what it is. But I know there's no political appetite or voter appetite or taxpayer appetite to guarantee every single bank manager everywhere, because there's a lot of idiot bank managers that have been sitting around with free money for 20 years that don't know how to make money in rising rate environments and have no clue how to manage risk. Look what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. That's going to happen 10, 20, 30 more times. I have no interest in bailing them out. They're idiot managers. It's not my fault. Let the market get rid of them, and as it will. The market's good at doing that.
I think the bigger question, obviously I want to get your thoughts on Macron, but of this global move of countries moving outside the power of the U.S.
The only thing that matters for the U.S. is what is the default currency of the world, and secondly, who brokers the power. So those are the two issues that are at stake. Now, obviously, the world for a very long time has used the U.S. dollar as its default currency because it basically is the price of all commodities, whether it's gold or oil, right on down precious metals. And so I don't see that changing because nobody's going to take the Chinese yuan instead, no sovereign. not because the Chinese people are bad people, it's just that nobody trusts the Chinese government. So that idea is going to stall. Would I exchange my US dollars for Macron euros? Not a chance in hell would I do that. Maybe I'd consider the Swiss franc, and I do hold a position in Swiss francs, but that's a well-managed country. You can't tell me France is a well-managed country. I think really the only country that holds up the euro, and everybody talks about this in whispers, but I'll just blurt it out, is Germany. Without Germany, there is no euro. So it's interesting to hear what he has to say, and I respect him as a politician, but it's irrelevant to me as an investor. These ideas are bankrupt. There's no way on earth anything's going to happen in the U.S. dollar. Now, regarding leadership in policy on defense, that's a different topic. Many people speculate that perhaps the Biden administration isn't being as tough as they should be. All of this will be debated. We are going into an election cycle that's starting remarkably early. That in itself is just politics. I care about policy. Now, I think Putin's very surprised as how well organized Europe and the U.S. got. I think we shouldn't be messing around with Putin. We should give them more money and make him come to the negotiating table, because too many people are losing their lives. And he's not going to do that until he knows the war is lost. And so, he's a classic dictator, and the way you get those guys to the table is you say, look, you're going to end up like Mussolini if you don't solve for this, because people are going to be hurting in your own country, and they're starting to. Right. So you better start negotiating.
Just one more minute on this de-dollarization, because everyone's jumping on this bandwagon. Everyone's talking about it. Is it the death of the U.S. dollar? Just want to get more of your thoughts on it. I mean, is that just an improbable situation for you?
I've been listening to the death of the U.S. dollar since 1966. Every 2 years, somebody comes along and says, this is the death of the U.S. dollar. You only have to ask yourself one question. If you're a sovereign wealth fund, I don't care what country, Middle East country, Eastern and Western Europe, where is the majority of your wealth right now? It's sitting in the S&P 500, denominated in the U.S. dollar. Now, until that changes, there's no chance of another currency becoming the default currency of the world. People wanted to make it Bitcoin. That's interesting, but that's a speculation. That's not a currency. And so maybe a digitized version of the dollar, although that's going to be stalled out by privacy concerns, I think. Maybe a private version of that like USDC, but the basic unit of conversion of wealth and storage of wealth remains the US dollar. Ask any high net worth individual anywhere on earth where they want to put all of their money. Nobody tells you the yuan, nobody says the euro, nobody says the British pound, nobody says Brazilian currency, Venezuelan currency. It's all the US dollar. I tell everybody that has a concern with this, get over it. Where do you put your money?
When we see the headlines that countries are dumping their US dollars, looking to do trade outside of the US dollars, you're saying that's a completely different conversation, doesn't lead to the death of the dollar.
What country says it's dumping their US dollar? Cuba, Venezuela, Brazil? Who cares? It's irrelevant. No one's dumping their U.S. dollar that is a major trading platform, and everybody wants to trade commodities and goods and services in U.S. dollars. That's why I always call this out. Who's saying this? Find me a sovereign
China,
wealth
Russia.
fund. Yeah, great. Russia? Yeah, let me invest there. What a great idea. I mean, that's the whole point. That place is turning itself into an economic wasteland. What else can it say? They're not going to let them have any U.S. dollars until he cleans up his act.